More people are inspired to take action because they want to avoid the pain to get to the pleasure. Of course, I wanted the pleasure of owning a big business, helping a lot of people through fitness and nutrition and what Fit Body Bootcamp was going to become. What led me to really take action was the pain of never having to experience that panic attack and never having to feel like it was just me against all my employees. Because I'm like, well, if the business gets bigger, there's just going to be more employees that I resent if it goes at this pace. Or I can start having a conversation with them, and then that conversation is going to lead to some of them quitting, which it did, some of them staying on board and saying, all right, I will start setting higher standards for myself. Father Michael Butler always says, for the congregation to bleed, we must hemorrhage. So for your team to go, all right, Bryce, well, I'll work hard, I'll show up on time, I'll leave late. They need to see you hemorrhaging. And when that clicked, man, that was it. It was over. I was just all about building a high-performing team. That ended up weeding out the losers. Those who were like, wow, this is what I've been waiting for B to become, started stepping up. And then from there, we just started hiring people of that caliber. Every now and again, when someone of low caliber would sneak in, the business just weeds them out automatically.
Welcome to the Fitness CEO Podcast.
Hey, welcome back, friends, to another amazing episode of the Fitness CEO Podcast. I'm your Fitness CEO host, Bryce Henson, and I'm here another month with my man, BB. Welcome back to the show.
Good to be back, Brycey. Let's crush it.
All right. So today we are going to be talking about how to build a high-performance team, and we've both done that. You certainly have done that in 2 decades of business entrepreneurship. So we're going to kick it off. That works for you?
Yeah, man. Let's rock.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the traits that you look for when hiring a team. And you have many teams. You've built many teams throughout your career. What are those traits?
Well, the traits are very common amongst many of the people in this building, right, when you think about it. And the running joke I always say is, you know, they're type A, high speed, low drag, tightly wound, right? And you can really break that down. And, you know, type A, high speed, low drag, tightly wound. Tightly wound in that, you know, you're the type of person, I'm the type of person, everybody in this room is the type of person. It's like, if I've got an unread email, I'm not going to leave because it's 5 o'clock. I'm going to clean out all my inbox, finish all my text messages before heading home. There's not a thing that I'm going to leave for tomorrow if it needed to get done today. It's just I've got higher standards for myself. Like I'm just driven that way. And before, I used to have those expectations of myself, but I'd never had those expectations of my team because I was like, well, you know, I'm a founder, I'm the CEO, I'm the guy that created the brand in the business. Of course I'm supposed to feel this way, but I can't expect this of my employees. And so I really had shitty employees who under-delivered, showed up late, clocked out early, dropped balls, never held themselves accountable or to a higher standard. Like today it's very different because what I expect of them is what I expect of myself, and what I expect of myself is what I expect of them. And in fact, when we hire people, we tell them right off the bat, like, hey, it might be sexy to watch what we do here in this building, whether it's Fit Body Bootcamp or True Lean or my coaching businesses, etc., watching it on social media. But once you're here, it's the high-speed train, you know, and sometimes the high-speed train will rattle your teeth right out of your face.
Oh, yeah.
Unless, you know how to deal with it. And so if you're not a person that is high-speed, like that train, where you don't have these limiting factors and belief systems that hold you back from becoming your best version, right? If you're not low drag, where if you're like an overthinker, a procrastinator, a hand wringer, like that person's not going to fit in.
No.
We'd rather we'd rather you take action, and if that action was the wrong action, course correct and pivot. Take the right action, rather than being indecisive. Like the indecisive people do not fit in here. And so when we look at people like that, it's always high speed, meaning make fast decisions, and then course correct if you need to. Low drag, meaning don't be the type of person that is taking too much emotional bandwidth from everyone. In other words, if you're a great team member, but you're gossiping, creating rumors, creating drama, like we don't want you here.
No, it crushes the culture.
Right, exactly. So high speed, low drag, tightly wound, right? As in, like, get shit done before you have to leave. Like, hold yourself to higher standards. And then type A, like, just, like, be a bit neurotic. And the term that I used to use a lot, I go, I'm a control freak. I'm a control freak. And people are like, you know, being a control freak's not a good thing. I'm like, no, that's the connotation, but it really is a good thing. I can control my actions, my thoughts, my day, my feelings, my thoughts, like the processes. And the more things I can control, the less things are left up to chance. And that's what I want when I'm building a business. And that's what I want my team to operate like as well, to be control freaks over the things that they're responsible of.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. The people that say control freak in a bad way, typically speaking, they don't have control of their lives.
No.
They don't have control of how they act, the fitness regimen they're on, the way they outlook at their life. Like, it is wild to me. So being a control freak is amazing, and that's what we do in this building.
I mean, don't we expect for people to have, like, hey, have control of your emotions. Like, control yourself. It's like we expect that of people, but to say that I'm a control freak somehow has gotten a negative connotation to it.
Wild.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. This is a show on business, on fitness, on self-mastery. You talked about Bedros 1.0 being that, hey, I'm the CEO and the founder. I have these expectations for myself, but not other team. Something changed in you. I'm looking at your shirt, flip the switch.
Yeah.
What flipped for you to really become the higher version of Bedros 2.0, to really expect this, not only for yourself, but also your team?
Yeah. Well, it's really great that you're saying that. 11 years ago, so I'm 49 years old now. At the age of 38, at the age of 38, I had a massive panic attack, so big that I thought I was having a heart attack. Right, and I was like, man, I'm 38 years old. I'm dying right now. My arms are tingling. My chest is tight. I've got tunnel vision. I'm just like taking shallow breaths, sweating profusely, and I'm like, this is how I die at 38. And I had burnt the candle on both ends, thinking like, I had resentment towards my employees, if you want to know the truth. I resented my employees at the time, and I only had like 10, 11 employees, not much, maybe even 8 or 9. But I resented them for not doing as much as they could, and I was upset with them, yet I was passive-aggressive as well, right? So I never really, instead of going up and talking to them about what my expectations are of them, I was just passive-aggressive with them, and they would just be passive-aggressive towards me, never really correcting them. So I was burning the candle at both ends and ultimately had this big panic attack. Thankfully, it wasn't a heart attack. Went to the doctor the next day. I'm like, man, I think I just barely saved myself from a heart attack. After doing all types of EKG tests and all that, they're like, no, it's not a heart attack. It was a panic attack. Like, you're probably stressed out. I'm like, yes, I am. But that was the flipping of the switch, realizing that if I keep trying to go at this pace, me trying to work as a fighter jet while being surrounded by crop dusters, like, it's not going to work. So one, I needed better life structure. I needed better sleep structure. I needed to work out. My workouts were inconsistent. It was like, okay, today I plan on working out. But it could have been some days in the morning, some days in the afternoon, some days in the evenings. Well, your body does not like that.
No.
You're strongest in the gym at a certain time because you condition yourself to be strongest at a certain time.
And humans are better on routine. So setting a routine, you're going to get a better output.
Yeah. And so I had no routine where gym was concerned. My diet consisted of mostly foods from Starbucks, and I would do the best that I could. But at the end of the day, you're still dealing with a lot of processed foods, not getting my protein requirements. And so now here I was, 3-4 years into starting Fit Body Boot Camp, and I kind of gained about 30 pounds, and I'm making selfie videos, but trying to keep them from the chin up because I was too embarrassed to show my body, right? Like, how are you the CEO and founder of a fitness franchise, but you've put on weight and you can't really show the rest of your body, right? And so I was incongruent. And so that panic attack that I had really helped me come to the decision that I must become congruent with the man that I want to be, the CEO, the leader that I want to be. And I was like, okay, what does that guy do? Like, if I wanted to be the CEO of a $100 million franchise, what would that guy be like? And I went to my marker board at home, and I was like, okay, he'd wake up at the same time, sleep at the same time. He would have a morning routine that would set him up to win. He would prioritize his nutrition and his fitness and his stress management. And as I started to do that, I started to see the wins in my body, weights falling off, rebuilding muscle again. Then I was like, what else would that CEO have? Well, he'd be a good communicator. He wouldn't be passive-aggressive. He'd expect from his employees what he expects of himself. And so the flipping of the switch happened as a byproduct of me feeling like I'm going to die right now from this panic attack.
Pain. Yeah.
Pain is a great motivator.
Oh, yeah.
I think more often than not, and I think I've heard Tony Robbins say this, more people are inspired to take action because they want to avoid the pain than to get to the pleasure, right? And so that's what it was for me. Of course, I wanted the pleasure of owning a big business, helping a lot of people through fitness and nutrition and what Fit Body Boot Camp was going to become. But what led me to really take action was the pain of never having to experience that panic attack and never having to feel like it was just me against all my employees. Because I'm like, well, if the business gets bigger, there's just going to be more employees that I resent if it goes at this pace.
Oh, yeah.
Or I can start having a conversation with them, and then that conversation is going to lead to some of them quitting, which it did, some of them staying on board and saying, all right, I will start setting higher standards for myself. But I had to set those standards first because Father Michael Butler always says, a dear friend of mine who runs a big church out in Michigan, he says, for the congregation to bleed, we must hemorrhage. Right?
Wow.
Think how powerful that is.
Yeah.
So for your team to go, all right, Bryce, well, I'll work hard. I'll show up on time. I'll leave late if I got work to do. Like, they need to see you hemorrhaging for them to bleed.
Oh, yeah.
And when that clicked, man, that was it. It was over. I was just all about building a high-performing team. I set the standards for myself, and then I expected them to set the same standards. That ended up weeding out the losers. And then those who were like, wow, this is what I've been waiting for B to become a better leader, started stepping up. And then from there, we just started hiring people of that caliber. And then every now and again, when someone of low caliber would sneak in, the business just weeds them out automatically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Within 90 days.
Easily.
Yeah. All right, I want to talk about communication, but before I do, I mean, just you struck a chord with me about pain and my own journey about, becoming Bryce 1.0 to Bryce 2.0, and it comes with pain. And for our audience, I've shared this, but I'll share it again. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I stopped drinking alcohol in December 2016, and what I realized, very similar to you, B, I wasn't living a congruent life. Now, I wasn't the type of alcoholic like my father who drank every day, drank out of a paper bag. His job, he never had a job, was all over the place. I actually looked at that. That's what alcoholic was. So for me, it was a hard, concept to grasp that a binge drinker could be an alcoholic. So I'd get my stuff done in the week, but on the weekend, Friday, Saturday, I'd let my hair down, and one turned into two, and before you know it, I couldn't stop. And through a series of really tragic situations for someone that I love, someone that I adore, what I realized was that she struggled with the same problem that I did, and I was being an ineffective leader. And then maybe not something I could have done specifically or physically to remove alcohol from her life, but what I could do for myself is I could start leading myself better through what you just mentioned, I refer to as moral authority, walking my own talk. And I flipped the switch in December 2016, made that decision to remove alcohol from my life. And dude, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you today, which I think is a great message for our audience. Is you got to put in the work. It's about you. It's about your self-growth and self-mastery if you want to be the leader, the business owner, the entrepreneur.
Yeah. And we talk about flipping the switch. It's ironic that I'm wearing this shirt.
Yeah.
But we talk about flipping the switch. It really is that easy. The example that I used on my show one time was the change does truly take place in an instant. We may be thinking about that change for weeks, months, and years, but it takes place in an instant once you commit. It takes place in an instant once you commit. And the reason is, the example that I used was, imagine a woman who's in a toxic relationship with a man who abuses her physically and mentally, right? Emotionally. And they have kids. Well, she knows this relationship is bad. She knows that she's being abused. She knows she's being belittled. She knows she doesn't belong in this relationship. She deserves better. But for years, she actually defends him when people go, hey, what's that bruise? Oh, I don't know. I fell. Hey, how come you couldn't go to that party? Oh, I just didn't want to go. I just didn't feel like it. Instead of saying, this controlling asshole wouldn't let me go, right? But then something happens somewhere down the road. Maybe that husband, that abusive husband, threatens the kids or something. And then one day he goes to work, and then boom, she's gone. She gets the kids, takes their clothes, gets the bare necessities, and she's gone. Change was like a flip of a switch. She just thought about it for a decade, dealt with the abuse for a decade, found excuses for him for a decade. But when she decided, it happened. And so I always say, like, sometimes we hover right there, right below bottom of the barrel. They always say, like, well, I hit rock bottom. I think there's a place worse than rock bottom. The place worse than rock bottom is right below rock bottom because it's a miserable place to be, but it's just not quite rock bottom where you're ready to finally flip that switch and make that decision. So you'll stay in that miserable place for a long time until something happens and you hit rock bottom, right? Like something must have happened in 2016 when you're like, now I'm going to stop binge drinking.
Rock bottom, baby.
Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy. And actually, to your point about using that word picture about abused woman, that was the story of my life, my mother.
Yeah.
For 10 years, dealing with my
holy
father.
Shit. Right.
And then finally, the great escape one night, and he was verbally abusive for those 10 years. As it turns out, one drunken stupor binger of a weekend came back after being out of the house for a few days, lost a few $1,000s, which is a ton of money money for us at the time, and came home inebriated, intoxicated. And before you know it, my mother exchanged a few choice words for good reason, and things got physical. And she almost lost her life that night. And like a bat out of hell, she got out of that house. And that's when the flip switch. But to your point, the years prior to that was actually probably the worst part. That rock bottom moment sucked in the moment, but it changed the course of trajectory of our lives.
But like exactly. But the years prior, where she just dealt with this miserable quality of life,
that was worse.
Yeah,
love
it, man. Isn't that something? Like when that hit me, I was like, oh my God! If I know anyone who's an addict, I have to push them overboard.
Yeah.
To like, I don't know, overdose or something or something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like I got to get someone to the point of rock bottom as quickly as possible, because hovering just over rock bottom, you could be there for decades, man, and have a miserable existence.
That's the worst place to be.
Yeah. And I know we're talking about building a high-performing team, and I don't know how we got down to this rabbit hole, but we did.
And it's about self-mastery and growth that this show is about. So, all right, so next topic would be communication. You just talked about this. You improve your communication skills. Also, too, when you're dealing with the high-performance team, you're going to have conflict. You know, people aren't always going to get along every single time, which is part of business and part of life. So from your perspective, B, how does an audience become a more effective communicator, set better expectations, be able to provide better vision, and also be able to resolve conflicts, which happens when you're building a high-performance team?
Yeah. So we're not taught communication in life. We're just really not, unless like you go to university and there's some like debate classes and communication classes, and maybe there you taught something, but it's really not as applicable as it is in the real life. And most people, they're taught actually to not communicate, because the families that we all grow up in, you know, something happens, and we're not going to talk. We don't talk about money in this family. We don't talk about what happened to Uncle Bob. We don't talk about why we disconnected from the grandparents, and we don't talk to them anymore. There's no communication. That's mostly how people handle crisis and issues, through not communicating.
That's my family growing up, for sure.
Right. And so we're taught to suppress our voice and to not communicate. And we're also taught, like, oh, hey, don't say that. You know, you might offend someone, like if you say something, right? So not only are we taught to like suppress our voice and to not communicate, but we're also taught that if you try and attempt to communicate, you might actually hurt someone's feelings, Bryce. Don't do that. And so now we're like, okay, well, I got these people who are waiting for marching orders from me. I don't know what to do. So you're like, hey, can you make sure you get that done? But we're not specific. Get what done? By when? What does done look like? Right? And so when they don't get it done the way you want and when you want it by and exactly how you want it done, you start getting passive aggressive with them, because that's also what we're taught where communication is concerned. We can just be passive aggressive instead of actually going, hey, you know what? Those things you said really hurt my feelings, Bryce, and I think we need to have some communication about it, clear the air, and put it behind us. Like, that would be the adult thing to do. So as I went from 1.0 leader to 2.0 leader, I realized, all right, communication is important, and the best thing I can do is study some of the best communicators on the planet. And so I started to kind of Google, like, who are some of the best communicators on the planet. Ronald Reagan's name came up. General Schwarzkopf came up. There were some really good communicators.
Oh, yeah.
And you study how they communicated, and as I was able to drill it down to tell, show, do. They were able to clearly tell the people that they were in charge of what they wanted, what a win looked like. Tell them what a win looks like. Tell them what you want done. Show them how you want it done. Maybe show them examples, or if it's a thing to do, show them how to do it, right? And then finally, ask for a due date, because then the expectations are not irregular. Meaning, I'm like, hey, Bryce, I'm going to tell you, like, when you're done, I'm going to tell you to take that mug and take it upstairs and wash it. You're like, okay, so I told you. And then show. Bryce, I'm going to teach you how to wash that mug properly, right? Okay, got it. Or watch this video to learn how to wash that mug properly. There's a show part. Tell, show, we got it. But if I just go do it as soon as possible, to you that might be, it's the end of the day, I can do it first thing tomorrow morning. To me, as soon as possible, as soon as these lights go off, the cameras go off, the mic is off, that's as soon as possible. So it doesn't make sense. Like, you've got one expectation of soon as possible, I've got a different expectation of soon as possible. Now I'm going to be salty and upset with you. But if I'm like, hey man, do it right when the mic and the cameras and the lights go off. I've told you, I've showed you how, and I've set the due date. Now, you might be like, hey, B, I'm in a hurry. Tatiana has plans for us. I got to get out of here. Is it cool if I do it tomorrow? Or is it cool if I have someone else do it? So it's not like that due date is in stone, but now we can communicate. So better example of that is if I'm having a web developer make a website. Hey, here's what I want the website to do. Tell them. here's examples of other websites that I want to model, right? Show them. And then I want it done on this date. And they might go, whoa, 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 you don't realize the complexity that you asked for. I can't get it done by that date. It's going to take actually 2 months longer. Is that okay? And if I say yes, now we have a new due date. It doesn't matter to me when the due date is, as long as we both agree upon it. Now I'm going to expect that if that due date is coming and you're like, oh my God, I ran into new problems, you better communicate with me and be like, hey, that due date's not going to work. I'm going to need another week. Is that possible? And I might say no and say, hey, hire another programmer to help you. Or yes, it is possible, so let's reset a new due date. But once we have those tell, show, do complete, like all expectations now have been met and there is no assumptions being made. And you know what they say, when you make an assumption, you make a ass out of you and me, right? And so we don't want to assume.
Yeah, totally. And I think the last part for me in my leadership has been so impactful because I've always inherently known how to tell and show, but the due date is so mission critical. And what I've done is, hey, B, I'm going to be able to, I need this by end of day Friday. Does that work for you? Just asking that particular like follow-up question, and then you're getting immediate feedback. And then to my point, your point, my next question was, how do you manage expectations? You clearly communicate when you want it by, and as long as you come to that agreement, that's half the battle in managing expectations. Make sure your team is dialed in.
Yeah. And then once you're a good communicator as a leader, you have to teach your team communication. So if we're talking about building a high-performing team, if the team can't communicate with themselves, sales department can't communicate with the support department can't communicate with the sales and compliance department. So now you've got people working in silos. And so now, again, we're left to assumptions. Sales department goes, man, I made a sale, but the compliance department didn't send the wire in time, and so we lost the sale. Well, was there a communication happens like, hey, when I make the sale, can I send the payment wire? Can you tell me how long it takes for the wire to be sent? Is there a process for you guys to follow up with me and tell me if the wire was sent and if the money came in so I know if I can track my commissions? And so we need to teach our team members. So it has to be a trickle-down effect. If the leader can learn to communicate well, that's great. Now you got to teach your team to communicate upwards to you and then across to one another so that you don't have people working in silos. Now we have a machine that's everyone's rowing in the same direction instead of these people rowing in that direction, those people rowing in that direction, and again, we have chaos on our hands.
And especially as your business grows and expands, the level of managing expectations, the amount of communication, it just exponentially increases in value because you have way more moving parts, you have way more complexity. So as you grow as a leader, these principles grow in the importance of time as well.
Yeah, massively, massively. It's almost like the importance and the value of communication, emotional discipline, being high speed, low drag, not gossiping, all those things, the value of each goes higher as your company evolves and grows.
Totally.
Yeah.
The last big kind of topic around building a high performance team that I want to dive into is the ability to motivate, inspire. And I would like to think our teams are very motivated, inspired by us. We're inspirational guys. We walk our talk. We live through moral authority. We do the work. We do the reps and sets. That's been a framework for me on how I motivate and inspire. It's really tell, show, do, leading by that example. So I'm curious from your perspective, if you can expand on that. But if someone's listening here saying, okay, cool, yeah, I want to build a business. I want to be an entrepreneur. But how do I, bring on a team, motivate them, inspire them to the level that they're going to be executing at my level of standard? Let's unpack that. I'm curious on your feedback.
That is a really cool thing to ask, and that's important because the reason that you might be an entrepreneur is different than the reason why they might decide to work for you, the entrepreneur, right? And so we need congruency there. You might say, well, I want to help a lot of people through fitness, and I want to make a lot of money. Well, your employees may not be in a position to make a lot of money because you're the founder, you're taking the bigger risks, you're going to make the profits, you decide how much you get paid, you get to decide how much they get paid, and you go, hey, you guys don't get paid as much as me, because that's usually how business works. And so you have to go, all right, well, I'll lead by example. That's one good way to motivate a team to be high performance. Like you said, I'll lead by example. But another way is I lead through vision, right? In other words, if I can cast a vision that is very clear, what is it that I want to do? Like, let's say, remember Bryce originally, before becoming the CEO, you wanted to have 10 of your own Fit Body Bootcamp locations. You were halfway through
that before was the vision.
I was able to recruit you and make you CEO here, right? Or bring you on board as a VP and then CEO. But that was the vision. Well, obviously, you had to sell your vision to your spouse, to your team, And the vision couldn't be like, hey, I want 10 locations so that I can make an immense amount of money, because they'd be like, well, good for you. What's in it for me?
Right.
So what we need is buy-in from the team. So we have to go, all right, what does my team want? So my vision has to be, what is it that I want? When do I want it by? So we have to have we have to cast a clear vision. What is it that I want? When do I want it by? A date. I want 10 locations by year, whatever, right? And then why do I want it? The why is most important to your team. Because if it's like, hey, because I want to make millions of dollars so I can get a private jet, well, I can't jive with that. I can't relate to that because I'm an employee. I'm probably going to be running workouts at one of your Fit Body Bootcamp locations. So good for you for being on a private jet. I'm going to take my Prius and drive home afterwards, right?
I mean, it's funny, but this is the thoughts that are going through your teammates' minds. So this is super important. Pay attention.
Because I've been the employee before many a times, because I've been the employee. But if you're like, hey, we're going to have 10 locations because while we're all going to be able to make better money, the overarching goal is to have 10 locations. They're going to give us each 500, let's say, clients per location. So we're going to have, X number of, 5,000 clients in total. And each of those clients, impact 3 people in their lives through health, fitness, nutrition. Now we have the trickle effect throughout the cities that we're serving. Mm-hmm. And if you are into fitness, you are into health, you are into taking control of your own health and fitness, then you're going to want to work with me, Bryce Henson, with these 10 Fit Body Bootcamp locations so that we can scale this thing to 5,000 clients throughout the 10 cities that we're going to be in. Now, if they buy into that, that's the buy-in, right? And so anytime, if you're money motivated, it's good to make money, and it's good to make a lot of money, and it's good to take care of your employees by paying them well. Mm-hmm. But most of us, leaders included, are not so much money motivated, but meaning motivated.
Yes.
And so what is the meaning of my job, my role that I have here? Like in 2020, you and I took a big pay cut. Mm-hmm. And in 2020, I stopped my salary from Fit Body Bootcamp because the meaning of saving Fit Body Bootcamp and having those locations out there thriving and being able to get to a place where the pandemic's over and then we can start rebuilding again, it was important for me to take the financial hit for the sake of the meaning. I was so bought into the Fit Body Bootcamp vision.
And I did that for my locations as well.
Exactly.
My main focus was here. I had to do that so that way the meaning and my team was supported. So
yeah. Right? Goes back to, if we don't hemorrhage, they're not going to want to bleed.
Right.
And so we have to hemorrhage for them to bleed. And so it is important to get buy-in from your team, cast a very clear vision of what you want. When do you want it by, so they know that we're working all towards a date. It's not just some pie-in-the-sky dream that one day we're going to own 10 locations, and each of those 10 locations are going to have 500 clients or so, and we're going to be helping people, but not by one day, but by this date. Mm-hmm. And then why are we doing this? Because we want to help a total of whatever, 15,000, 20,000, 30,000 people over X number of years, take control of their health, fitness, and a positive mental attitude. Like, wow. And if you're a coach, you're a facility leader, you're a front desk person, if you believe that and you're bought into that, when the going gets tough, not if, when the going gets tough, economies will change, competition will come up, another pandemic will be announced. When the going gets tough, your team members will be bought in.
Yeah, amen to that.
Yeah.
And also what it does too, especially when you cast a vision like that, cast a vision so large you can fit other people's vision in your vision, it provides them more growth and more career opportunity and more, ambition to attack that mission together. Mm-hmm. So it's just a trickle-down effect that really, at the essence, gives you the ability to build a high-performance team, because in order to be successful in business, and I didn't know this from day one, I actually thought, when I first was opening my first location, I thought, how can I be the most efficient, which efficiency is good, but hire the least amount of people for the lowest amount of pay to erect this massive empire? And that's just the wrong way to go about it. Like, at the end of the day, you need a high performance team bought into the mission, bought into the vision, the values, in order to execute that goal.
That's exactly right.
Which is, the theme of this episode. So from that perspective, my friend, those are the big talking points that I had. Is there anything from your lens that you wanted to finish out off in terms of the essence of, giving some good takeaways to build that team?
Well, I think if there's any one more thing to add, is that sometimes you have to recruit good team members. Other times you can see something in someone and realize that they've got the raw ingredients where you can develop great team members, right? And you've been with me in this building long enough where we've recruited leaders, mm-hmm. and some have worked out, some haven't. Mm-hmm. And then we've also developed leaders.
Oh, yeah.
We've got one leader, the leader of TrueLean, who ended up 8 years ago, came on board as a graphic designer for us. And then shifted from Fit Body Bootcamp to working for TrueLean as a web developer, and then today he runs TrueLean as a VP and is kind of walking in your steps. You know, and that's really cool to see. Like, there's a great example of Jeff Rosenquist developing himself into a great leader. And so when you see someone's got the it factor, it's worth the investment of time and energy.
Dude, I love that. And that's just part of the growth and the development that we're on. And shout out to Jeff, man. I love that guy. Like, the light behind his eyes, the ambition. It's been a great journey to see. And that's, thankfully, we've been able to share many of those experiences throughout our business endeavors. So.
Yep, exactly.
Well, my dude, this has been an awesome episode. We're going to close out today. So I appreciate you being on the episode. And my friends, assuming you got a lot of value from this, go ahead and like and subscribe. That would mean a lot to us. We can keep producing this content for you for free. And as we sign off today, remember that no one is coming to save you. You must save yourself, and the time is now. Appreciate you, and we'll see you, my friends, in the next episode.